Hey everybody, it's Jork. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for your continued support. If you found me, it's most likely because you're interested in Portugal, moving to and living there. That's what we did a few years ago. And if you're interested, please subscribe because that's what I like to talk about, as well as Europe travel news. Today I wanted to make a video because I've talked to several people, specifically from the US, that are looking to make a move in 2023 or 2024 to Portugal, and they're just starting their scouting trips in the process and evaluating where Portugal is versus other countries that are high on their move to list. And I wanted to just make this video to discuss the program, or I'll call it the entity that handles the visa process for those of you from the US. So it's called VFS, and that is the name of the company that is, I'll call it the clearinghouse for the 3 Portuguese consulates within the United States. As you're thinking about moving, I want to talk about these specifically because they're, depending on where you live in the United States, there are different times or delays from when you make the appointment to when you can actually get in for the appointment. And I want to talk about that because as more people are considering a move to Portugal, some of the delays are starting to creep up from, let's say, 1 to 2 months to 3 to 4 months between appointment to actually getting in to be able to take care of your documentation and get to Portugal. So let's look at it. If you go, you need to go through this website called VFS Global. I often make the mistake and say you need to contact the consulate to make the appointment, and sort of, but that's for different types of matters. When I say go to the consulate, or if other YouTube creators do that, for US, you're actually using this third-party service that works with each consulate to be able to facilitate all of the visa, some of the documentation, the fees, things like that, that you'll be doing and paying as you get ready for your move. So I wanted to bring up this particular page because it's about where you live depends on where the consulate is, and that will also depend on how long it takes as of late 2022 and probably going on for the next 2 years from when you're able to get in and actually have that appointment. So there are 3 consulates: Washington, D.C., New York, and California, San Francisco. And these 3 consulates, as you see where you live stateside, depending on Washington, D.C., there are several states. It probably handles the most amount of states and cities: Illinois, Chicago, so big cities along the way. Much of their business is Northern Virginia, Maryland, and the D.C. area. That hub of people, the most amount of clients that go through, or applicants as they will call them, come from that particular area as opposed to the rest of the states that are on their list. So although they have the most amount of states that they're looking after, they actually have the least amount of applications that they're working through. So if you're in one of these states and you apply through Washington, D.C., within 30 to 60 days of making the appointment, you can get in as of the making of this video for your appointment to be able to get to Portugal. Now, the Consulate of New York, that area, so that jurisdiction, you've got Connecticut, so people that don't want to live in New York, that maybe want something a little cheaper. Sometimes that can be more expensive. Michigan, Detroit, there aren't many people from Michigan that are thinking of a move to Portugal, quite honestly, and New York. And then they also have some Bahamas and Caribbean islands along with Puerto Rico that they handle. They have actually, for the coverage, the territories that they cover, they have the second most applicants, and it's all New York. It's not just the city, but the state of. There are numerous people that are applying to move to Portugal from New York. So because of that, New York has a little more of a backup, where it is maybe more likely 60 to 90 days from the point that you apply to actually getting in for the appointment and taking care of the process and the paperwork that's needed to get to Portugal. And then lastly, you have San Francisco. And that covers a very wide territory and a lot of populous cities And many people from those particular cities are looking to move to Portugal. So obviously California, San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, but Oregon, Portland, and greater Oregon, number of people are applying from the great state of Oregon, Washington, Seattle. I've talked to a number of people in the last 90 days, several that are in and around Seattle that are thinking about a move to Portugal, and they're going to have to use the San Francisco office. Arizona, Phoenix, one of the top 5, 6 cities by population in the United States. There are dozens of people that I've talked to in the last year or two that are from Phoenix, as where we were last from before we moved to Portugal, that are considering a move. So all of those places, all those states, I'll say the West U.S., have to use San Francisco. They are getting 3 to 4 times the applicants as the other 2 consulates combined. And how I know that is I emailed all of the consulates as well as VFS Global, and it took about 15 emails to each one of them over the last 2 months, and I didn't get any response from San Francisco, didn't get any response from DC. I got one response from New York, and I did get a response from VSF that just said that based upon the last 2 years of applicants from the United States, San Francisco, that office is handling, or that VSF third party is handling 3 to 4 times the applications of New York and DC combined. So because of that, depending on where you live and if you are on one of the western states, you just have to realize that, okay, it may be 90 to 120 days from making the appointment to getting in, and then how does that factor in getting your 12-month rental agreement if you're doing that, or if you're purchasing property. Trying to finalize when you're actually going to get to Portugal is not as easy. It's just going to take longer. My hope is in the next couple of years there will be a 4th consulate that opens up somewhere, or somehow some of these western states will have the jurisdiction of, let's say, DC or New York, to be able to alleviate so that you're not waiting 3 to 4 months. And as more people apply, hopefully that doesn't go to, let's say, 5 or 6 months, especially if you're on the West Coast. But I wanted to make this video because more people are contemplating here in late November, early December 2022, a move next year. And some people are already realizing that if they're on the West Coast, that they may not even get an appointment until February or March, which means that they're obviously not going to move until, let's say, sometime this late winter, early spring into Portugal, best case scenario. So as you're thinking about that, some of the pain points with the bureaucracy, I'll call it, sometimes we talk about the fun that is Portugal, but oftentimes the fun starts in your home country here in the U.S. with dealing with and handling the VFS Global application process, but also working through the consulates to make sure that everything's in order. And if you just happen to be on the west side of the country, you're kind of stuck just because more people are going through San Francisco. I also want to bring this up because this may be something that you're thinking of. Well, maybe we're in California, but we'll move to New York for a few months before we move to Portugal, or maybe we'll sell off everything and then we'll live in a, I don't know, we'll live in a hotel and we'll make an appointment in New York. And that's not possible. Based upon all your documentation, your state residence determines your jurisdiction. So as much as it would behoove people, if you could get out of, if you're in Seattle and it's a 4-month wait to get into San Francisco, that process, if you could get to DC and get in 30 days, you'd love to do that. It just doesn't work that way. They're very finite and set on jurisdictions. So keep that in mind, so you can't do any last minute moves. Once you've made that appointment, you're locked into whatever consulate handles your state, and I'll say the VFS Global partner / consulate. So it's a long-winded video. I apologize for that, but a number of people have emailed, and since we just got back to the States here for the holidays, several people have contacted me asking about this particular question. So I wanted to respond to about 8 people so far that have asked this question, get this out. As always, thank you so much for sticking with me and watching the videos. Enjoy your travels, and let's hope everyone can get to Portugal as fast as possible. Take care. Have a good holiday.